Again, I add my welcome to Billy's on this Labor Day weekend. So nice of all of you to be here instead of somewhere else celebrating the long weekend. And we come together this morning once again with, heavy hearts, hearing of another shooting in Texas and then worrying about the people in the path of the hurricane. And so we come to be together knowing that we're fortunate to be in this space at this time. And our theme for this month is expectations, and I've chosen a reading by Gretchen Haley as our opening words. Whatever you have come in anticipating, whatever you expect or worry for our world, for the future, for our lives, let it go. Make space in your heart to be surprised. Make room in your soul for a new story to take shape. Let astonishment be possible at this life that remains a miracle. Imagine here the bursting of joy, relentless and resilient, coming in waves, washing over us with music and story, silence, and still this dreaming together, being hope for each other and courage to believe in this new day dawning for us all. Come, let us be in worship together. Thank you, and you may be seated. So I brought a reading today for all ages because our young people are up here with us for a little bit this morning, and I don't ever want them to not receive some message from us when they're here, right? So this is for everybody from a really good friend and minister, Jane Zepka. Some of you may know of her. It's called Shaky Skaters. Some of you can identify with roller skating, right? And with new things as you started a new year in school recently. So Roller World is a typical roller rink that rents foul-smelling skates with fragile laces, and then pounds your ears with senseless, hard-driving rock music. Roller World caters to people with no standards, no taste, and no class. Like my family and myself. I love Roller World. No one was born to skate, but there are a room full of unlikely skaters doing our best. A few, of course, are hotshots, whizzing around on one foot backwards half the time, breezy as you please. And another bunch, sad to say, is hopeless. Their 8 little wheels completely ignoring mission control. But round and round the rest of us go, steady and solid, 1 foot and then the next. In careful time, and this is time dated as you'll notice, to the Beastie Boys or Twisted Sister. Folks look pretty darn good out there. I suppose I do too. No one knows that if even 1 word is spoken in my direction, I will lose my concentration and hit the floor hard. No one realizes that if they come up behind me too fast, I will panic and crumble into the wall. No one can see that this steady skater is so precarious that the act of skating, just skating, takes everything. As we roll around the rink, uncertain of our stride and rhythm, may we yet see the instability of those who surround us. May we help them when we are steady, holding those who falter. May we calm the reckless and urge the timid forward. May we keep gentle company with the skaters at our side. Let us move with the spirit of love, and may some quiet presence help us with our laces at the end. So our words for reflection this morning come from another friend and minister, the Reverend Scott Taylor, who is the person who helps us coordinate our themes for the month. And this one is expectation. So Scott writes, remember that you are always allowed to quit. There's nothing real about expectations. Their weight can feel solid and inescapable, but they're only imaginings. Your imaginings. Their strength comes only from your consent. The first step is never easy, but trust me, by the second step, you will discover how easy it is to break free. Okay, so now if that's sunk in, I'm going to invite you to rise in body or in spirit if you so choose. If you prefer to stay seated, that's fine too. Sometimes you sit during this song, but some people like to get up and move a little bit before it's time to sit down and listen some more. So either way is fine with me. Thank you. You did great with that. I never know when I'm choosing a song you haven't sung before. But notice that the words are by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow and music is Thomas Benjamin, and there's a little chalice symbol next to both of those people, meaning that we claim them as Unitarian Universalists. So that means that this is one of our songs. So how many of you believe that you have a theology that informs the way you make decisions about how you act in the world? Good. I ask because I'm not sure that we Unitarian Universalists are always in the habit of thinking about what we do as theologically motivated. Michael Hogue, who's a theology professor at our UU Divinity School, Meadville Lombard in Chicago, believes that we are not inclined to reflect theologically because we have a sense that theology is rather abstract or not very practical. In a talk that he gave at General Assembly one year, he wanted to make the point that theology is not an abstract, detached science of the divine. It is most of all a deep and practically engaged existential cultural criticism. That's for all the people who think you haven't been to church unless you hear something you don't understand. It's also for those of you who totally get what that means, all right? The philosophy professors among us. There are people who claim to be religious, even clergy, who adhere to a type of religion that is exclusive and that leads them to believe that there are people of lesser worth or value. That is the kind of religion that can make someone ignore the pain and suffering of others because fundamentally they don't believe that the other people are equal to them or deserving of equal treatment. It is against that narrow-minded approach to religion that liberal religion stands. Labor unions, and this is Labor Day weekend, labor unions were about the belief that everyone deserved to be treated with respect. And some of the leaders in the movement were motivated by prophetic theology. While their theology was Christian, it was not the exclusive fundamentalist Christianity that raises the hackles of many Unitarian Universalists. The person that comes to mind when I think of this is Miles Horton, who started the Highlander Folk School in Tennessee. Are some of you familiar with Highlander? Oh, you should study up on that a little. It's a very interesting story. It's a place that I first learned about in relation to training or encouraging people to be active in the civil rights movement. But it actually started as a way to educate people about organizing around fairness for laborers. In his autobiography, Miles talks about religion and his family. They were Presbyterian, and while he was in grammar school, he found some theology books in his grandparents' attic, and he started reading. One day he went to his mother and told her that this predestination he'd been reading about didn't make any sense to him. "I don't believe any of this," he told her. "I guess I shouldn't be in this church." His mom laughed and said, "Don't bother about that. That's not important. That's just preacher's talk. The only thing that's important is that you've got to love your neighbor," she said. She didn't say love God. She said love your neighbor, and that's what it's about. She had a very simple belief, he wrote: God is love, and therefore you love your neighbors. Love was a religion to her. That's what she practiced. And then he went on. It was a good non-doctrinaire background, and it gave me a sense of what was right and what was wrong. And then he took that to another level. It's the principle of trying to serve people and building a loving world. If you believe that people are of worth, you can't treat anybody inhumanely. And that means you not only have to love and respect people, but you have to think in terms of building a society that people can profit from. And that kind of society has to work on the principle of equality. Otherwise, someone gets left out. The principle is easy, he said, but the application is not. Miles had one of the earliest jobs when he was a teenager, one of his earliest jobs, making crates for shipping tomatoes. They built the crates right in front of the packers, and they got half a penny a crate. So, as you can imagine, they had to build a lot of crates really fast to earn any kind of money. He found out that the other workers in the factory were getting more than he and his friends, so they asked for a raise. He had analyzed the situation. If there weren't any crates, no one could pack the tomatoes, and the tomatoes would pile up and the owners would lose money. So He got the other kids to stop making crates, and they organized a union. I didn't know it was a union, he wrote. We just got together and said that we wanted more money because everybody else was getting a lot but us. When they said no, we just quit. The owners couldn't believe it, he said. They told us, we'll just get someone else. And we replied, go ahead. There isn't anybody else that can make crates in this town. We're the only ones fast enough to make them, and there aren't even any other towns around. They said, no, you can't quit. So we took 2 hours off. The tomatoes kept stacking up until we got a raise. Miles kept working different jobs, learning about the labor market, going to college and reading and studying on his own. He encountered racism, systemic injustice, and the violence of poverty, which had been close to his life. The violence of poverty, he wrote, destroys families, twists minds, hurts in many ways beyond the pain of hunger. And the kind of violence that supports the violence of poverty is institutionally sanctioned violence. He knew that powers could be used to keep a person in line, and that if you are trying to change things, you need strategies and you need to understand the situation. All along, Miles was trying to reconcile his understanding of the nature of society with his own values and beliefs. The contradiction was so strong, he wrote, that I couldn't get the two together. He wanted to understand how love could exist in a society that exploits people. He understood Jesus to be one of the few examples of someone who simply did what he believed in and paid the price, and would have done it again if he'd lived. From this example, he accepted as unquestionable something worth struggling for is worth dying for. To make life worth living, he decided you have to believe in those things that will bring about justice in society and be willing to die for them. So in the fall of 1929, he went to Union Theological Seminary to try and find out how to get social justice and love together. Union Seminary housed a very intellectual crowd for this Appalachian boy who had not been spending much time in this community of discourse. But he came across a professor who obviously recognized the spark of curiosity and the sharp intellect, and this was Reinhold Niebuhr. Niebuhr is regarded by the authors of many texts on modern theologians as next to Martin Luther King Jr., the most influential American theologian and preacher of the 20th century. Pastoring a church and living in Detroit from 1915 to 1928, he came face to face with the harshness and disruption of urban industrial life and the seeming irrelevance of his homilies or sermons in comparison to what was going on. He left Detroit for Union Theological Seminary in New York City, where he taught until 1960 when he retired. So I have a book written by Niebuhr's daughter, Elizabeth Sifton, that was published in 2003. It's a collection of memories and a story about her father's life and his family and his friends and how he lived his life and how it's reflected in her thoughts and memories. And so it's a tribute to his legacy of liberal religion. The name of the book is The Serenity Prayer, which many of you may be familiar with. The Serenity Prayer, Faith and Politics in Times of Peace and War. Reinhold Niebuhr is the author of the Serenity Prayer. In the preface, Elizabeth points out the irony of people assuming that the prayer is German when it was written by an American of German descent whose family for generations had kept a sometimes strict, always careful distance from the fatherland. Niebuhr wrote the prayer in 1943 at the height of the war against Germany. She wrote, an American pastor who found himself at odds with Protestant and Catholic church leaders because he thought that they, like many other public figures, had failed and were failing to give heed to the hideous threats posed to democratic freedom everywhere by totalitarian and fascist forces. In his preaching, he was critical of his own country's isolationist neutrality prior to Pearl Harbor. He was a deeply devout man, she wrote, and he wrestled daily with the problem of how to relate his innermost religious commitments to the public life of the community. I think we are always doing that also. The Serenity Prayer was first used by Niebuhr at Heath's Union Church in a farming village in a remote corner of northwest Massachusetts, where her family from 1930 to the 1950s spent the long holiday from Memorial Day to Labor Day in that spot. So apparently, it's not unusual for ministers to take that period of time for reflection and renewal. I thought maybe it was just a Unitarian Universalist minister's tradition, but maybe it's a New England tradition. Although Union Church was Congregationalist, which is, cousins to us. But clergymen, she said, had formed, and of course it was clergymen then, had formed associations with one another in Heath since the First World War. And ethnic and social hostilities had been exacerbated by the war. And many Americans, she writes, responded defensively, allowing their fellow citizens' liberties to be constrained, their lives restricted in the interest of security and safety. Things that we are familiar with today. The reflexive nastiness, she claims, seem regularly to appear among us in stressful times. Her father and his colleagues thought this was wrong, unchristian, and certainly unconstitutional. They worked hard to curb xenophobia, to defend the rights of immigrants, to end the exploitation and inequities that make life so harsh for so many working people, to insist on the rule of law, to make things freer, not less free. It's so what we're hearing about today, right? Among Niebuhr's Christian colleagues was the deeply shared belief in the relevance and essential value of the Christian faith in dealing with the human crisis of the time, and an understanding that it was vital to get Christians to join across national or denominational borders and make their faith universally relevant. They wanted to cure racist and nationalist malignancies that had contributed to causing the Great War in the first place. They wanted to improve relationships between Christians, Catholics, and Jews. And she is quite sure that her father and his friends were most discouraged by the bigotries that they grew up with and that they heard from the mouths of typical American clergy. She thought, though, that most clergy were like her father, and then she says, how wrong I was. I grew up completely insulated from the barbarous, self-congratulatory sloth of what journalists call mainstream American Protestantism. And it took decades to realize this. Their ethic was based, as hardline ethics usually are, on fear, not love. So the dilemma that she presents in her book is one that we as Unitarian Universalists struggle with, wanting to reach across lines and across faiths and across nationalities and ethnics, and to work in larger circles with people to make change, because together we can accomplish so much more than we can as a small group of people. And that's why I'm so excited about the move in this church to connect across groups in Pensacola with the Interfaith Justice Movement. And your social justice committee is getting involved, and we're all going to be involved in being able to do more in our community by making these connections. We may not share the same faith with people, but we can share a lot of the same concerns about justice and values and living wage and all these kinds of things that are happening around us. I'm interested in what is universal, what is at the core of religion that moves us toward more justice, that is life-affirming, compassionate in its outlook, that nurtures and sustains life, promotes justice, equity in human relations. And I think that those are the principles that we're here to uphold. a way of discounting people because of their faith has sometimes surfaced in our congregations and not served us well. So we're moving beyond that. We're reaching out to people who may have some beliefs that we find quite strange, unusual. Maybe we can't relate, but we can relate to the causes that they're going to be involved in. We can relate in the love for one another and for the community. So that's pretty much all I need to say about that today. I'm just excited that we are embarking on an effort to join with other congregations and faith communities around our city to do work that fits with our values, and it's just so needed. I mean, I know that we come here Sunday after Sunday, having heard the news and worried about what's going on in our community and in our world, and it's hopeful to believe that we are taking a step forward in making love our religion. May it be so. So our closing song, as we come marching, marching, is actually from a strike that happened in early 1900s. Women, mostly women working in a textile mill, but then a lot of people joined them and they walked out and they clashed with authorities. It was a very dangerous strike. I think 30,000 people got involved. And there was a slogan about wanting, we want bread, we want enough money so that we can feed ourselves, but we also want the beautiful things of life, roses. And so this strike became known as the Bread and Roses Strike, and they still commemorate this every year on this weekend in Massachusetts. And so we sing this closing song in honor of the women and men and children that put their lives on the line to make fairness in the work. Thank you, choir, for helping lead us in new songs today. Thank you for joining in the singing. As we release the hold of expectations and disappointments, as we stop trying to live into the imagined life and live the one that we've been given, we discover profound inner freedom to make choices out of love rather than obligation or resentment. And I want to just say something that Rob Palme said the other day at a meeting. He said that he was going to do a sermon on art and religion, and we were talking about creating what we do here on Sunday mornings. And I said, yes, that's like art. We're creating beauty. We are bringing in the roses on Sunday morning. And so thank you for being here to smile and shine and be a part of this lovely garden. Go in peace.